Hi, my name's Asger and welcome to Wine Guest Video Wine TV. Over the past couple of months, what we've been looking at the Sauvignon Blanc grape variety, and we've tasted a number of different wines which are all Sauvignon Blanc based. Now, what are the classic characteristics of Sauvignon Blanc? Well, first one is it's bone dry, high levels of acidity, and really the key sort of aroma that comes off in the various wines that we tried from New Zealand to Sancerre and Polyfume from the Loire Valley, and from the various Chilean wines that we tried, the Los Montanos and so on, Sauvignon Blanc. And what we found, okay, right, is that yes, bone dry, high levels of acidity, but the underlying taste was classic gooseberries. So I thought it would be interesting to pick a couple of wines up that have been tasted over the past few months and say, well, how do they compare, and what we've been discussing over the last few episodes of the different Sauvignon Blancs, do they have the very similar styles? And I thought it'd be interesting to see how this one particularly goes. So what we've done is we've got the Domaine Fleuret from France, which is a Sancerre from the Loire Valley that we're going to taste today. We've also got the Polyfume 2009, again from the Loire Valley, but to the opposite side of Sancerre. And we've got a couple of styles from New Zealand, which is the Oyster Bay from the Marlborough region. And we've also got the Century Hill, again a 2009 from New Zealand. All of them Sauvignon Blanc. These guys clearly labelled as Sauvignon Blanc on the grape variety on the labels here, and the Sancerre and the Polyfume again with his Sauvignon Blanc grape variety. So let's have a whirl and see what we make of him. So first one we're going to do, okay, is from the Loire Valley, this particular Sancerre Domaine Fleuret. So let's see what kind of classic. In fact, let's pour them all out together. That's the first one. And then we've got this one here, the Polyfume. So we'll whip this one down around there, and we've then got the Oyster Bay from New Zealand, again the Sauvignon Blanc, and finally what we've got is the Century Hill from Marlborough. So let's have put them alongside each other and see. We'll give it a whirl and see what we come up with. So we're going to try the Sancerre first. Let's see what aromas we get from this one. So the first one that hits you, okay, is the gooseberries, and this one it tends to be a little bit flowery, and a little bit of grassiness coming through. So a little bit of grassiness coming through this one. Very, very ripe, very, very clean on this one. So yep, typical gooseberry undernotes within that particular wine. So let's take this one, the Polyfume, and again, this one's not as lively as a Sancerre, but again, the gooseberries are there, not as much flowery, a bit more. Again, with the Polyfume, we said it was a bit flinty, a bit smoky. So yeah, that certainly comes through and is coming through the wine. But again, underlying notes of the gooseberries, that certainly is in there as well. So that's the Polyfume, two French classic styles. And let's have a look at the one from Oyster Bay, Marlborough. Again, slight bit of difference there. I mean, this is much more tropical in terms of flavours which are coming through. Again, gooseberry notes in there for sure, but again, compared to that one, I'd say this one a little bit more earthy, and this one a little bit more the tropical fruit varieties in there. And finally, we'll have a look at the Century Hill. Again, classic, again, the gooseberries are there, but very much tropical flavour, the melons are certainly coming through. So very ripe tropical fruits in this one. Whereas as opposed to these two, again, very, very fresh, but I'd say, a lot more grassy, a lot more earthy compared to these two, which have got a lot more tropical flavours coming through as opposed to those two. Again, all of them gooseberries. So yeah, for a Sauvignon Blanc grape variety, yeah, clearly gooseberries stand out. So let's have a taste of this one. So the first we're going to try the Sancerre. Again, very, very fresh. The acidity at the back here, yeah, very high acidity, bone dry. It's definitely bone dry, this one. In terms of flavours, well, again, our classic gooseberries are definitely sitting there. A bit more flowery, elderflowers. Yeah, very much sort of a flowery taste to it. Grassy, that's the one. A bit more grassy in that one. But again, a classic Sauvignon Blanc, high levels of acidity, gooseberries, but an excellent wine if you like something which is good levels of acidity and bone dry. So let's have a look at the Polyfumet now. Again, grown opposite Loire Valley, opposite to the Sancerre, across the valley, or across the river rather. So again, we've it's just a little bit more flinty, but let's have a bit of a taste. Again, the acidity, you can feel it, the mouth's getting wet. So good levels of acidity, again, bone dry, but in terms of flavours, yeah, the classic gooseberries are definitely sitting there. Again, a lot more, I wouldn't say it's as tropical as this one, but again, there's some sort of tropical notes coming through there in this particular wine. But again, one of the things about the Polyfumet is the slightly smokiness, that almost like, yeah, the flintiness, which is coming through there. So again, a little bit different to the Sancerre and the Polyfumet, but again, in terms of the classic style, it's there, high levels of acidity, bone dry. So let's try this one, okay, right, from Oyster Bay now. So, the first thing hits you with is good levels of acidity. Again, bone dry. Probably not as, no, I'd say they're about very similar in terms of dryness. The Sancerre, the Polyfumet, and that one, pretty much in terms of dryness, are very, very similar. But what's different about this particular Oyster Bay is that you've got the classic gooseberry notes coming through there. However, it's much more tropical. You know, the tropical flavours are much more relevant to this particular wine as opposed to these two. I get the classic gooseberry, then a bit of melon, a bit of tropical fruits coming through there. So, typical sort of base, which is the high acidity, that's coming through this particular wine. But in terms of flavour characteristics, a little bit different. But again, still bone dry. So last but not least, okay, well, let's have a look at this Century Ale again from a similar region, Marlborough. This is from Marlborough, this is from Marlborough as well. So let's have a boil of this one. See this? This has got a lot more acidity than the one from Oyster Bay. Clearly bone dry. Classic gooseberries coming through there, but a lot more tropical. So from a simple taste that we've done of the four wines, two from New Zealand, two from the Loire Valley, what I can say is these ones carry, you know, much more fruitier in terms of the tropicalness, whereas these two, again, bone dry, high levels of acidity. But what I'd call it, they feel a lot more earthier, you know, a lot more grassier. Again, the tropical fruits are there, but as not as dominant as the ones from New Zealand. So this finally, just have a the New Zealand wine. Let's just finish up with the Century Hill one. Good acidity, bone dry. with tropical flavors with the classic gooseberry notes. So, what I've enjoyed about this particular tasting is that we've tried 4 different wines, 2 from the Loire, 2 from New Zealand, and what we got from it was the classical, what I'd call notes that you would get from the Sauvignon Blanc grape, which is high levels of acidity, a classic, your gooseberry flavors coming through in all 4 of the wines. But in particular, okay, what was interesting about this one, okay, the flavors are slightly different. So depending on what part of the country or where it's grown and so on, what we're finding is that, yeah, apart from the sort of basic characteristic notes, what we've got here is a wine that if you were drinking it, you would know is a Sauvignon Blanc because of its high acidity and the classic gooseberry flavors coming through. And yet they've got their own little bit of individual style, a little bit of tropicalness in there. This one a little bit more grassier, and this one the polyfume with its little bit of flintiness. But the underlying fact is that it's a Sauvignon Blanc grape with good levels of acidity. So have a whirl, try all these wines out.